Welcome back to another Mobalytics video. Today we're looking at 5 quick tips to climb ranks with Bard. Bard is an amazingly unique champion with tons of different ways to influence games and a far more creative playstyle than most other supports. Hopefully this quick guide will help teach you a few things that you may not have known about. Starting off with tip number 1, which is all about how to abuse Bard's Q. Bard's Q is one of the most underappreciated crowd controlling abilities in the game. It has a much longer range than people think, and it can be used in a variety of ways to make it unpredictable and much harder to anticipate. First off, we're going to talk quickly about its hitbox. It's a lot bigger than you'd expect, and this can prove super useful in a ton of different situations. It doesn't even necessarily need to be used in a line. It can be used when opposing champions are standing next to each other with a slight diagonal. Bard's Q will also stun if an opponent is standing next to a wall rather than in front of it. They will likely think they are safe, but in fact due to the width of this hitbox, if you angle it correctly, you will instantly stun them against the wall. This ability can also follow people if they flash or dash, even over walls. Once the first part of the Q hits, the second will hit the target as if it were in its original location. Bard's Q also has a much longer range than its auto attack, so you can surprise your enemies by using this ability from the fog of war before leading in with your auto attacks and your passive. You can also Q flash this ability, making it even harder to react to. Not only that, but you can also change the angle whilst doing this, creating the potential for even more outplays. This Q flash with a change of direction can be tricky to pull off and will need a bit of practice though. Next up, we're taking a look at Bard's ultimate. And Bard's ultimate can either be one of the most effective ultimates in the game or kind of the worst. This is all dependent on infinite scenarios and circumstances. It can be used to engage, escape, trap, catch, or anything else, you name it. So we're going to list here a few of the primary uses for this ultimate, just showing you how versatile this ability is. Did you know Bard's ultimate can be used on champions, turrets, jungle plants, minions, objectives, and pretty much everything else that you can engage with in League of Legends. You can use Bard's ultimate to ult a whole team ready for your team to engage or to prevent them from engaging. This works amazingly well with certain allied abilities. Imagine lining up a Bard ult straight into a 5-man Malphite ultimate. Bard's ultimate can be used to save allies who are being targeted. Then, if you're feeling even more cheeky, you can put a shrine under them so as soon as they come out they'll have a movement speed boost and a heal. You can also use it on enemy turrets to dive your opponents. This is an amazing way to abuse Bard's early aggression capabilities. One thing to mention though is you can't use your ultimate on a turret if the previous tier turrets are still up. Make sure to factor this in to prevent baiting your team into a suicidal dive. You can also use this ability on an objective like a Baron or a Dragon to stall your opponents for your team to get there and contest it. Alternatively, you can ult the entire enemy team and then just steal the Dragon or Baron. You can also use this ability on your own turrets, which is amazingly well when preventing Rift Heralds from stacking up those plates. You can also use it on yourself or your teammates to prevent any delayed ultimates such as a Karthus or a Fizz ultimate. Don't forget that you can also combine this ability with your flash. Now this has many creative uses and you can completely big brain your opponents with it. When you are surrounded by enemies, use your ultimate on yourself and your opponents and then just flash out of your own ultimate at the last second. This can make for a cheeky escape whilst all your enemies are locked up in the immunity. Don't forget this also works with your own teammates but does require a good bit of communication. The third tip is all about Bard's Chimes. So Bard's passive has 2 parts. One is the collecting chimes and 2 is using those with your auto attacks. Bard doesn't actually really have a very good level 2 or 3 power spike like some champions in the bot lane do. However, he does get a decent boost when he reaches 5 chimes. The first 2 chimes will spawn at 35 seconds into the game. Then at 1 minute 25 seconds, the third chime will spawn. You'll then need to wait a few minutes before securing your next 2 chimes and then using these in lane to potentially secure kills with your improved auto attack damage and slows. Try to combine this with your Q and ignite for a decent early all-in opportunity. So there are several ways to get opportunities to go and collect your chimes, but the most important thing is that you don't completely ignore your AD carry when you try to do so. You want to try and pick the right times to leave lane and pick up these chimes to make you stronger without tilting your fellow laner. One of the best times to do so is when you've just finished a fight in which either you've got some kills or your AD carry has been killed. This is prime time as there isn't actually anything else left for you to do, especially if the wave is in the right place. Another optimal time to go chime picking is whilst roaming and ganking. Bard excels at ganking, especially mid lane due to it being so easy for him to get to, especially with his E, so always try and pick up chimes in the process of doing this. You can also combine gathering chimes with getting vision control in the enemy jungle. Once you're out of the lane phase, you'll want to try and wait until there is a quiet period of the game when objectives are off the map and no fights are inbound to go and do a mass chime collection. Every time you return to lane with more chimes, you're going to have more experience and you're going to have more damage on those auto attacks. Make sure you're abusing this if you do have a lot of time to collect them. Tip number 4 is all about your magical journey. So there's quite a fair few unique tips and tricks that you can do with Bard's E to really separate yourself from the rest and become that one trick bard that you've always wanted to be. Bard's Magical Journey is an insanely unique ability, and there are several 200 IQ ways that you can abuse it. Aside from the obvious ones of escaping, baiting your opponents into taking it under your own turret, or faking it altogether and laughing as your enemies fly away from you. The first thing to learn is the best walls in the game to utilise it best. The most obvious one is getting back to lane. These will help you get back to bot lane much quicker and prevent you losing any farm and experience. Here are some of the best walls to use when you want to gank bot lane from either side. This is going to allow you and your jungler to bypass wards and get behind your enemy lane opponents to get the jump on them. Here are some optimal walls and routes to take for roaming and ganking other lanes, most commonly being the mid lane. And finally, here's a few of the best walls that you can use a tunnel on for maximum map mobility. This can help you get around the map quicker, which is amazing for warding, collecting chimes, or making picks on your opponents. Bard's E can also be used on Dragon or Baron Pit to fly through the pit, gaining vision without actually going inside it and getting one shot by your enemies. This is a great way to check if your opponents are doing these major objectives, or to check what health it's on so that your jungler can set up and prepare to steal. There's just a few other things we also wanted to mention about Bard's Magical Journey. You can use Bard's E from further away than you think. Just because you aren't specifically near the wall doesn't mean you can't set up the journey for your teammates. This can also be used for yourself in combination with your flash to get out or in quicker. By flashing into your tunnel, you also cancel the animation and therefore make it even faster. You can also use your ultimate on yourself or your teammates or enemies whilst they're inside your magical journey. As long as the travel has started when the ultimate hits you, you'll continue travelling whilst golden. This can be amazing when you or your teammates are low health and escaping with those damage over time effects ticking away at you. This one is extremely hard to pull off, but it does feel pretty awesome when you get it right. Finally, we're going to talk about tip number 5, and that's all about matchups. So Bard is an absolute beast when it comes to roaming, setting up kills and ganks and creatively outplaying his opponents, but his lane phase is really where you need to practice him. Some matchups aren't too bad, but some are pretty difficult, so you need to invest a little bit of time to learn how to play this part of his game. The 3 matchups we're going to be covering today are Karma, Blitzcrank and Alistar. So let's start off with the hardest one first, Karma. So this is arguably one of Bard's most difficult lanes. You can't really fight her due to her general kit just being so much better overall than you in those 2v2s. Karma's lane phase is basically just better than Bard's in general, and not only that, but she also scales better too. The trick to playing versus Karma as Bard is to never make the first move. If you miss your Q, you're going to be rooted and you're going to be bursted down and punished. You have to wait for her to waste her abilities and then look to punish her for it afterwards. Make sure you're not getting poked down by Karma's Q, especially when it's empowered. This is the easiest way for her to win this lane, by just whittling you down with poke. Make sure you're hiding behind minions and leaving some health shrines in the background just in case you do get poked down a bit. You also want to play near your walls. If Karma does walk up and use her W on you, you and your ally can outrun the tether with your magical journey. It doesn't need to be a long wall, but just enough to escape that route. The last thing to do in this lane is to outroam Karma. Your ganks are far more punishing than hers, so when you can, roam to mid lane and get your team ahead instead. Next up is Blitzcrank, and he's always been a very irritating support to play against, and this does not change when playing Bard. Blitzcrank brings more threat than you in the lane phase and will often be searching for early kills. Make sure you're standing behind the minions similar to the Karma lane and not getting hooked, as if you do, you're basically dead without flash. Pay attention to the minion waves and keep track of Blitzcrank's experience leads as well, as this is a prime time for him to go in and fight you. When you're level 6, make sure you're ready and waiting with your ultimate if Blitzcrank manages to land and engage on you or your teammate. Bard's ult can completely deny an engage and allow you time to set up and escape. Roaming again is a huge part of this matchup too. Both champions excel at doing this, so try and get a step ahead of him and just do it better. The last thing in this matchup though is just to be patient and outscale him. Although Blitzcrank will always be useful at making picks with his Q, Bard offers so much more the later the game goes on with his utility, control and playmaking capabilities. As long as you don't int Blitzcrank in the early lane phase, you'll have no trouble being more effective than him as further the game goes on. Finally, the third matchup of the day is going to be Alistar, and this one is pretty straightforward. Now Alistar definitely has points where he's capable of snowballing and getting on top of Bard, however, generally, Bard will be able to keep him at bay. As Bard, you can bully Alistar down at level 1 and 2 before he gets his early combos off. You can abuse his melee range with your auto attacks and your Q and look to whittle him down so he can't actually engage. Alistar does have the edge in this matchup from level 3 to level 6 though, so this is the main time to respect him. As long as you don't give your opponents a lead during this window, you will be absolutely fine in this lane. If Alistar sets up a big engage with his ultimate active, pop your ultimate on him and remove him from the fight. He's hard to take down due to the tankiness of his ultimate, but he's pretty easy to deal with when your ultimate is available. Alistair is also a champion that has a tendency to try and dive when he gets ahead, and you have plenty of tools to combat this if he does. You've got your magical journey, your Q stun, and your ultimate, and these are plenty of tools to turn the odds in your favour. Once you get out of the lane phase, you will simply outscale this champion. You offer more engage, more control, more utility, healing, and a bit more damage. That's going to conclude our 5 quick tips to climb ranked with Bard video. We hope you enjoyed it, and we really hope these tips help you climb ranked when playing this champion. That's all from us here at Mobalytics, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care.